and I have a person to admit, and we are live on Facebook and recording on Zoom. It's a success.
Oh, nice.
All right. So I want to say good evening and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration, where I always say life is too short to drink cheap champagne. And I like to provide information that allow us to sip into something inspirational. Today's guest is the infamous, the famous Jewel Daniels Radford. Jewel has an incredible background. And as you can tell by the title, she is author of a book that talks about the benefits of a good crisis. I thought that was just absolutely fantastic. She's the president of Daniels Communication, which is located in Montego Bay, Jamaica. And just FYI, they are having fantastic weather there now. She's from Brooklyn, though, and she's as a corporate trainer, an entrepreneur, and she left New York, headed south, which I thought was very interesting. And I want to get her to share her story as to how she got from New York to around Georgia and down to Jamaica. She is still actively involved in professional organizations, and she was a past president of the American Society for Training and Development in Savannah. She holds memberships in the Society of Human Resource Management, the Montego Bay Chamber of Commerce, Savannah Chamber of Commerce, Blacks in Government, and a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. She is a community service advocate, having served on the boards of communities and schools, the MLK Foundation, and Quantum Incorporated. And of course, she loves to read, travel, and she paints when she works from home. So welcome and thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to give my audience a chance to get a pen and paper as you join in, because as you know, this is a session that I think during this time of the pandemic, which is a crisis and have caused other crises for others, that you're actually going to get some very good information. You do have the comment box in Facebook if you're watching it through my Facebook Live page. Please enter your questions there. They're being chatted to me so that we can discuss them during this session with Jewel. Thank you very much. So let's get started. I've got a lot of questions. Right. First off, I'm curious, how did you get from New York to Montego Bay, Jamaica?
Well, darling, let me tell you, it is a journey and an interesting one. So I am a Brooklyn-born West Indian American girl. You know, my mom's roots are in the South and my father's roots are here in the Caribbean, which is what brought me back home. But my mother was one of those hardworking sisters who wanted to improve life for her only child. So we found our way in Staten Island, New York. I attended middle school. Very interesting because I was in a Lutheran middle school learning Latin and German, and then went to an all-girls Catholic school, and my best friend Trina and I were the first two Blacks to actually attend St. Joseph Hill Academy. And then by that time, my stepfather, George, who's deceased, who helped to raise me, one of the most incredible men in my life, felt like I needed more balance. And he knew about Hampton University, one of the best HBCUs in the country, of course.
Of course.
So that was how I went to the South for my education, but I met my college sweetheart there. And I wanted to attend graduate school in Asia at the time because it was the country on the rise, and I was going to study international law, and he was committed to the military. So he had to fulfill his obligation because of his scholarship while in school. And I said, well, baby, I'm not sure how this gonna work. I don't know about this, but the beautiful thing is we loved each other enough that instead of going to Japan, I got picked up on scholarship to go to school in Seoul, South Korea. We spent 2 years there because he got an assignment there. And then the next step was Hinesville, Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Talking about seeing the world.
Yes, it was a big shift, because I was a big city girl, and yes, I spent time in Hampton Roads, but we had traveled out of the country and landed in this small town. And when people said, "Hey, baby, how you doing, sugar?" and I said, I'm a New York girl. I don't know anything about this.
See, I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas, so I know about baby and I know about sugar. I know. So when I moved to Chicago, it was like, she calls everybody baby and sugar. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, and in the South, people want to get to know you personally, so they would walk up to me and they would give me a hug. In New York, we don't do that. We don't, we keep our distance. So that was unique, and but I came to love it. It was a good fit. We left Hinesville. I wound up in Savannah, built my business, and then after several years of being in the South, which was beautiful with its own set of challenges because of the history there of Blacks and such. My daughter was getting older and she didn't know a whole lot about our West Indian culture. So I decided that I wanted to help her understand what it intimately meant to come outside of the country from which your roots are, to live in another country but be responsible to give back. And I wanted to, experience it myself. Being West Indian and living in the States, it's different. It can't be duplicated. So I took an assignment here as the Global Learning and Development Manager for 4 countries for Vistaprint. And then they downsized, and I said, okay, well, semi-retirement is what I wanted to do. But they gave me a wonderful package, and I used that as the seed money to start my business here in Montego Bay. So my company's here in Montego Bay and in Atlanta, Georgia.
All
And
right,
that's my story.
congratulations. I love that story. So, but my son graduated from Jackson State University, so he would say that that was the best HBCU. But so, for those
But
of you
it's a good school. It's a
listening,
good school.
so for those of you listening, you can see uh, we believe in HBCUs, and you're looking at a
Yeah.
product of an HBCU. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, let's get started with questions. Number one, Jewel has written a book, as I put in some of the marketing materials. Uh, the title is, don't let me get this wrong. You're the author of Three Sides of Every Crisis, correct? Okay.
Yep.
3 sides of every crisis. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you are convinced there are more than 3 sides. Okay, so, but, but Jewel's book is 3 sides of every crisis. So, and I thought that it would be good to discover and talk about the benefits of crises and how we should look at crises. So one of the questions that I would like to start off with is, how do you discover if that you're in a crisis? A lot of people don't even know that they're in a crisis.
Well, if you're paying attention enough and you have good people around you, the combination of the two is going to force the environment to show you that things are not moving at its normal pace. What has become familiar to you no longer is familiar. The things, the tools, the resources that you have that would normally contribute to the way you run your life, whether it's your personal life or engage in your business life, all of that is in upheaval. There's a lot of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling vulnerable. There's this uncertainty. Things have become more complex than they once were. It's a lot of ambiguity. And it's actually a term called VUCA that the US Army came up with that represents how people experience crisis, all right? And what they engage in, those 4 different experiences. And when those come together, the combination of one or two or all, the intersection of those things are definitely signals of a crisis. And then it's how you feel physically. The beautiful composition of the way our body is designed is that it will tell on us. So when you start feeling sluggish, you're sleeping more, if you're a person who's normally positive and you struggle to be positive, all those things start to add up. And when they become compound and complex, you've hit crisis state.
So the first thing people should do is to pay attention to their body. So of course, that means that they should spend some time knowing and being able to define what life is like and how they feel when they are in a good place. Um,
Yes.
so, and I don't know that people even stop to do that. Um, so if those of you listening, be sure you make a note of that when you notice any changes. As Jewel said, your body tells on you. And that is really incredibly unique because we've been hearing that a lot lately in the metaphysical spiritual world, that the body tells on you. I just
Mhm.
think that we don't believe it when it tells us.
Well, and
Uh,
you're in a critical crisis is when you don't listen. Because
ah,
even if you fail to listen, the body will shut down. I remember when I was in the States and my business was growing, it was doing very, very well. I was working long hours. But sometimes you come into this thing of entrepreneurship believing that you're going to set all the rules, you're going to set all the hours. And yes, that's partially true, but when you left your job, you had one boss, one manager. When you run a business, you have several bosses, several people to report to. And I wasn't paying as much attention, and I felt it physically. And I kept pushing and pushing until one day I just laid down and was sleeping. I slept for so many hours. My daughter was worried about me. So you can ignore your body if you choose to. But when you hit critical crisis, it will tell on you and shut you down. And you don't want to get to that place.
so, what are the three sides of a crisis?
A good analogy is when people are telling a story, they're going to tell their side of the story. Someone else has their side of the story, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So when I thought about this crisis, this pandemic that we're currently in, so much of the news reports was about what was happening to industry and big business and the airlines and things of that case. That's what we heard most about.
Mhm.
But really, it's the people within the organization that make up the industry. So for me, three sides represents one, the view of the company, the business. So I dedicate the first three chapters to organizations, people who are within an organization, running an organization, who own a business. The second side is the story of the individuals who work to sustain, grow that business. Those people who are the HR professionals on the front line of those decisions that impact the wider base of employees, how it impacts you as a professional. And not just from the sense of impact, meaning you're still working in the job or you have lost your job. But I wanted to tackle what happens when you're in the business and your ability to pay attention and stay focused to the fact that you are garnering a set of skills that most people will not have. You will know how to navigate through this crisis if you're still on the front line in a corporation or you're leading that business. And while you're delving in that environment, that's great. But like we just talked about, if you don't pay attention to yourself and take care of your mental, physical, emotional, and especially your spiritual self, none of that matters. So the three sides represents what it takes for a business to be able to position itself, learn how to change perspective and pivot in this environment. What does a professional do? Whether you have lost your job or still in your job, what role do you play? How do you make it your power play? How do you look at new opportunities for you if you've been separated from the organization? Perhaps you pursue entrepreneurship. Because the good side of the crisis is in every crisis, innovation explodes, right? People are forced to do things that they normally or naturally would not do. So that's the benefit, because you may be forced to pivot or you may elect to pivot. But in doing both of those things or either of those things, you got to take care of yourself. Because if there's no you, the entity doesn't matter, your job nor your business.
So, on a regular basis, daily, what types of things would you recommend people do to take care of themselves? And then what types of things do you do to take care of yourself?
Sure. So some of the things that you should do to take care of yourself is figure out what your baseline is at this point. A lot of people are dealing with a whole gamut of emotions, sadness, anxiety, they're resisting the reality of the situation. Michelle Obama talked about low-grade depression, and you're fighting those emotions. But my theory is, if God gifted you with those emotions, then you just have to learn to deal with them. Don't feel as if you shouldn't be having them, because that makes the journey harder. So claim what you're feeling and decide what your baseline is so that you can build from there. So once you've got your emotional self and your, kind of your mental state in place and in order, and there's several things you can do to do that, you've got your village. I believe in the village concept. You have to have your family, your friends, your sister friends, and your sorors who will help you, and your brothers who will help you, hold you accountable and tell you when you've gone too far, or sometimes people see things that you can't see because you're in the middle of that circumstance. So when you identify your baseline and you establish your foundation, then you can figure out what your next move is. If you've lost your job, I do this thing that I call audacious career transitioning, which stands for ACT. Losing your job means that one door closed and a new door is opening. So now it's your responsibility to get on your grind and figure out what door you need to knock on. If you're in business, you have to reevaluate and figure out, what do you do differently, right? What you have done for so long has worked. And this is an unusual situation. So questioning yourself about whether you did something right or wrong really doesn't come into play in this particular circumstance, because the external factors of this crisis has been forced on everyone. So it's not about a right or a wrong. It's just dealing with the what is and deciding what will you do differently.
Because a lot of people are caught up in, did I do something right? Did I do something wrong? But those who did something right and those who did something wrong, we're still at the same place. So you're right, it's a moot point at this point, because maybe it's the collision here, as I always says, is the universe gave us a big time out for us to sit down and get still so that we can decide what it is we want to do and how do we get started toward it.
And I love that you said that. In business, we come up with lots of terminology, and we may use some big words, some small words. But when I look back and I think about the things that I've learned from the people who have been so instrumental in my life, it always brings me back to my village. My grandmother used to say, sit down and look through your strings. So growing up, I heard my mother say that a lot. This is the time in which you look through your strings, because truth be told, how many of us took a time out to figure out if this is the best place where we want to be? If we're getting all that we want out of this life? If we're living where we truly want to experience the next 10 years or whatever your senior siesta life might look like? We're so busy moving and acquiring and doing that we're not testing and reflecting and redesigning. This crisis allows us to do that.
So how would someone who, I don't want to call it autopilot, but sometimes we move on autopilot. Things are going really well. We're doing the same things the same way because we're working, and man, we've just got it going on. And then all of a sudden, that's just not the case. And there's a crisis, and you don't even know what your strengths are because everything's just been working so well to the point that you thought that you had all of the answers, and then now everybody's in the timeout. So it doesn't matter. It reminds me when one of the siblings did something wrong and the other siblings didn't stop them, everybody got a whipping and everybody got a timeout. So you're in.
Yeah.
So how do you find opportunity in a crisis, and how do you even realize that that's an opportunity? Because some of us just don't know when the opportunity comes. We just don't recognize it.
Yeah. You probably have been hearing the word pivot a lot. So I
Yes.
write about being able to, right, pivot and adjust your perspective. So if things have been working and they're continuing to work, then, that's a beautiful thing. But when you've had this jolt to your system because everything that you do has been taken away, the first thing you have to do is be gentle on yourself and give yourself time to grieve because it is a season of loss. It's a different type of loss for you. It's a loss of what you knew, what was familiar to you. And if you just try to push and force it, it doesn't always work out well. And you just find yourself back in a fever pitch battle of doing some of the same things. So give yourself time, be gentle on yourself. My girlfriend Monifa said that. I just love that she shared that with me. Be gentle on yourself. And I always say, give yourself time to grieve because then it allows you to just kind of look through your strings, as my grandmother said. If you're not sure where your skills lie, then you have the opportunity to do an assessment. There are plenty of free assessments online. I'm not going to endorse anyone in particular, but there's several assessments online that allow you to find what your best skills are. And the beautiful thing about technology, although it has its challenges, is that you can just type in whatever you think, whatever you're feeling, whatever words pop into your head, and something will come to you. So,
Yeah.
right? So you type in those key words. Look at what's around you. Think about what people have said to you that you're good at doing. What is it that you are passionate about? And often people will say, do what it is that you love to do, that if you never got paid a dime doing, you would do it. Well, I know that sounds absolutely ludicrous in a time of a crisis, but as someone who's been in business for over 20 years, the money always comes. It's hard to be in a role, to run a business that you don't like and that makes you miserable every single day. It's really, really hard. So if you have been separated in that kind of a way and that jolt has happened, it's really your opportunity to reassess and redesign the trajectory of your life. So, you take your assessments and you figure out what your skills are. Look around you and see what it is that you have been spending a lot of your time doing that perhaps people have said that you're really good at. This new environment that we're in, I credit some of it to the millennials, has just opened the door so wide to the diversification of opportunities in business. You can be in your living room, sitting on your bed with a laptop, blogging and making plenty of money. So there's so many different things that you can look to. I know here in Jamaica, it's been very interesting. So I've seen people do things like, there was this amazing designer, very known, well known for his high-end clothing. Well, there are not a lot of people buying high-end clothing in a crisis. He started making designer masks. And in the Caribbean, we love to make everything match. We love the flashiness of it, right? We love it. So he started making clothing that you could adorn with matching masks. And that changed the game for him as a business person. So that's how you pivot. You find what works for you and perhaps you layer and add to it, is one way to do it. You look at what may be your passion project. One young lady that I know from Vistaprint, she loved design, always loved designing, loved sewing. She started designing household pieces, frames, picture frames. She started doing pillows, just small pieces for individuals, and it turned into a business for her. Something she would have never thought to do if this crisis hadn't happened.
And it was probably something she really loved to do all
Yeah,
along. But sometimes we think
absolutely.
that, right? Because I hear people say, oh, no one's going to pay for that. It's like, you will be surprised because you're not the only person that loves it. It's just that everyone can't make it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, people, the funny thing is, I often say that relationships are the new currency of business. People are buying not just your product, but they're buying you. So when you have a good relationship with people, they will invest because they believe in you first. then some will invest because they just want the product, but a lot of people invest because they believe in you. I know that my book was not designed for every person, right? But all my friends, not all, most of my friends happily got on board, bought the book, and if they didn't need the book for themselves, what they did, they bought two books. One, because they wanted to support, and two, because they knew somebody who could benefit from the book. And that's what you do. So people are buying and investing in you, and they're buying and investing in the product or service that you're providing.
We've got a couple questions from the Facebook group. These sound positive. Is there a preparation step that needs to be made?
Ask that question one more time.
These sound positive. Is there a preparation step that needs to be made?
A preparation step to transition, to pivot. I guess that's what
Yeah.
Right. Right. So we talked a little bit about that in terms of one, accept what is. Take the time to really allow yourself to experience the fact that what you're feeling is okay. It's how you deal with it, how you respond to it, that can be okay and not okay. But give yourself the time out to accept that this is something extraordinary and unusual. The second step is think about what it is that you want to do. This is your opportunity to at least give it some thought. Why not test the waters and say, I've always wanted to go into design. I've always wanted to be a writer, and then decide what the steps might be to get there, which means researching that industry, researching the opportunities, and assessing your skills so that you know where your strengths are, and then perhaps where are those areas of improvement, so you can bridge the gap to know how you then get there. Look within your network. Hopefully you all have mentors. So turn to your mentors who can give you best advice on how to move forward. The other beautiful thing is technology allows us to be connected in a beautiful way. A lot of people use Facebook because they love to chat. Many people on LinkedIn, and they have 5,000 people in their network, and they've never talked to any of those people, which is a bit perplexing to me. But this is a really good time to really work your network. So reach out to those people who are in your network. You might be surprised that they represent industries and fields or professions that may be of interest to you, and just start asking the questions. And I know some people will say, oh, those people won't answer me. Oh, that's not true. Well, I've been in business for 20 years and I had to pivot as well. And one of the things I did, because I had so many people asking me about my book, but how do I apply it to myself as a solopreneur? Because now I'm starting my own business. My side hustle has become my main thing, and my main thing has been tested. What do I do? I started a podcast. And my podcast kicks off next week, and it's called The Solopreneur Journey. And I wanted to talk to people who are really single shingle, one person enterprises, kind of, just new to this game of entrepreneurship, or new entrants, people thinking about it. And I also wanted to talk to people who have found success and started off as a solopreneur. So I went into my network. I called Elliot Mazie, who is the father of e-learning. I talked to Tyrone Taborn, who owns Career Communications, a very successful multimedia organization. I reached out to so many people who I've known over the years. George Fraser, who I love so very much. He was the author he wrote the foreword to my first book. These people are authentic, and they are serious about their commitment to their work and their community. So they will answer, but they won't know unless you try. As my mama said, nothing beats a failure, but no try at all. So you have to at least try.
That's right. And if you never ask, the answer is always no. So you've got to ask, right?
You have to ask.
Another question, and we've talked about this a little bit, but people often struggle with this, and that's, how do you really tap into your passion? People really struggle with that, because I think passion is this esoteric thing, and I guess you're waiting. If you're like me, I'm always waiting for the money fairy to show up. So it's like, I guess you're waiting for the passion fairy to show up too.
Yes.
So what other steps can we talked about? Tapping into your network, asking your friends what it is that you are really good at. That's That's valuable. People don't realize just how valuable that is, because I know that's often something we usually do for free all the time, and we don't think it's valuable because it comes easy to us. But besides that,
Mhm.
what are one or two other things that people could do to tap into their passion? And for those of you who are listening, write this down and we want you to share it with your friends too, okay? Because after this, we want everyone tapping at least into their passion and just trying to decide where it is you want to be. Because these times, for as scary as they are exciting times. These are times to really, really, really do the things that you love to do. So
Yes,
besides
yes.
asking your friends, and we talked about taking an assessment, what is another thing that you could recommend that will help people tap into their passion?
You know what's funny? So for over 20 years, I've been a global leadership development expert, and I have been in several countries doing cultural competency and coaching and leadership development. And what I have found is most people don't have, they do have, but most people struggle with the ability to tap into their passions because they don't know how to say yes to themselves. They struggle with believing that they have the capacity to actually make a living based off their passion. And they get stuck, they stumble, and they stop when they don't realize or see the tangible results and the time period that they feel it should be. So here's the thing about tapping into your passions, especially if you want to do your own thing, if you want to run your own business. It takes time. You have to plant the seed, and like with any tree that grows tall and has a wide trunk and strong leaves that flow from all of those branches, it took time for it to get to that place. But if you don't believe that you have the gifts and talents and the abilities to be able to tap into your passion, that's your first step on why you get stuck. So your ability to get unstuck means that you have to look at your circle of influence. Look at the people who you are listening to and who are listening to you. Because there are a couple of folks that you have in your life. Couple means two. There are people who will feed you and keep telling you things just because it sounds good and they know you need to hear it and that it encourages you, and that's important. But then there are also those people who will tell you, okay, we've been talking about this for a while. What you gonna do about it? So you need that person who's going to give you that push and who's going to be your accountability partner. That's the second thing. So say yes to yourself. And the second thing is look inside your circle and find yourself an accountability partner. The person who will say, yes, you're doing a great job, but what are your next steps? We talk about SMART goals all the time. And if you're not familiar with SMART goals, they have to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and guess what? You got to put a deadline on that
That's
thing, which
right.
means it has to be time bound.
Right. Gotta be time bound.
It has to be time bound. So if you say you want to lose 16 pounds and you don't decide how you're going to lose those 16 pounds, what are you going to do to lose those 16 pounds? And then in what time frame? If I see you 5 years later and you say you lost those 16 pounds, you met your goal, but it took you 5 years. And so that's different for everyone. It's different for everyone, and it depends on where you are at this juncture in your life, what's going to work best for you. And then my third thing would be, in order for you to tap into your passion, is you have to make sure that you have set some criteria for how you know that you have reached the goal that you want. Not just because of the timing, but what things does it serve in your life? Has it allowed you to be seen different in your environment? Has it allowed you to move from that one room apartment to that 2-3 room house? What things does it bring for you? Has it fed you spiritually so that you feel like you're spending more time in your word and you've made space for that? All of those things put together are important. And if I could say it any stronger, I'll tell it to you the way my mama told it to me when I would get stuck on whether this was my passion piece. She would listen, you know, when I got stuck in business and things got tough. She cried with me. She worked with me. She partnered with me. And then she said, I need you to put an H on your chest and handle your business. So that's what.
We've lost sound, it seems. Jewel, would you unmute? I need you to unmute. Okay, there you are. Thank you. So we're going to all put H's on our chest right now, and we're going to handle our business, okay? So, Erica, so for those of you who didn't write because you were listening, you have to tap into your circle of influence. So those 5,000 friends in LinkedIn, and we brag about 10,000 people, friends, and connections in Facebook. Look through those and tap into the circle of influence, because they can help, and people are really willing to help, but they don't even know you need help. Okay. You're just sitting there. Okay. You have to tap into it, and then you have got to look for that person in your circle that's your accountability partner, one that's going to call you on your stuff, one that's going to make sure that you stick with it. As a matter of fact, those are incredibly important people in your life, and they usually can be a pain, but everybody needs one that will keep you together. And you've got to set some criteria as to how will you know when you've reached the success that you're looking for. So what do you want to do, and why do you want to do it? And you've got to be sure it's feeding you physically and spiritually. Okay, so if you don't know, and as Jewel mentioned earlier, if you don't know what you're good at, ask your friends, they'll tell you. As a matter of fact, they may not tell you what you're good at, but they'll sure tell you what you're not good at, and that'll help you eliminate.
Yes.
That's right. They'll help you eliminate that short-term. Okay. So as you're going through the crises, what types of things do you recommend that people do to sustain themselves while they're in a crisis? And then what kinds of things that you do to sustain yourself? Sometimes people think you can sleep it away, but you really can't. And they think they can eat it away, and you really shouldn't, because getting that weight off when you get those high blood pressure and A1C numbers is not an easy job. So you shouldn't eat it away. But people tend to do those things. But what other things can they do? Can they adopt into their daily life that will help them when they're going through the crises?
That's a great question, because it differs for everyone. Like, some people are tangible learners. They learn by application, by doing things. Some people are, visual learners. Some people are auditory learners. So it's going to be different for all of us. But I will share with you some of the things that I have learned to do, because it also impacts whether you're an introvert or you're an extrovert. So when I'm coaching my clients, I tell them that you have to incorporate things that are stretch opportunities, and you have to make sure that you're doing things to reward yourself, right? You have to make sure there's a good balance between the discipline of what you're doing and the pleasantries of what you do. So some things that I did, I tapped into something that I love to do, that I've always wanted to improve upon, that's fun. So I love singing. I don't have the best voice in the world. Matter of fact, those people that you say, tell you the truth, one of my sorors who is a pastor, I was singing one day, and she said, Soror, we sure appreciate that, but we're going to leave that to the folks who do that really, really well. And I wasn't singing for everyone, but she was in earshot, so we had a good giggle over that. But I took one of those online classes that taught me how to breathe better, how to carry my notes better, and I learned what I was doing wrong. And it has also helped me as a speaker, because I've been speaking for years. So it served me in so many different ways. It made me really happy. Even I don't have an ear for music, but I can hear the difference in how I sing at this particular point. If you love to cook, stretch yourself to cook things that are unusual, something that you wouldn't normally do. Change up your recipes. right? So try to figure out, how do you cook without meat and make it delicious? Because then you're still doing something that you enjoy and you're still eating, but it's healthy eating. So it's just finding unique ways to still serve yourself and find pleasure in the things that you do. This crisis has connected people in a way differently. So a lot of families have connected and talked to each other and friends a lot more than they once did, because they're able to jump online using whatever medium that works for you. And that's positive. And make sure that you are making more touch points than you normally would. So before the crisis, you may have seen a friend or certain people maybe once a month, or talked, every so often. Now, because we're not able to see each other, we need to double that, especially in a work environment. If you're working virtually, your touch points need to increase twice as much. And don't always look for something that serves you. It's amazing the joy we get out of serving others, which is why I love the work that we do, through my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And during this pandemic, one of the things we did a project that was called Giving While Social Distancing. We want to make sure that we were able to help those individuals who are at risk, high risk, and those who are financially, challenged. And we raised enough money to donate so that people could have masks. Women who were living with HIV and AIDS, people who were financially challenged, and seniors. And we found a way to give back to the community, but it also allowed us to connect. We did our social distancing, and it's just so rewarding. So sometimes we get so stuck in trying to figure out what's going to move the needle for us professionally or financially, that if you do things that are pleasurable and recreational and that give back to your community, attending that event or being in that environment, you just might run into the person that's going to be the key to the answer that you seek.
That is so true. That is so true.
know?
And there have been a lot of success stories from people who have done that, just helping others, and then you connect with someone. It's amazing when you're open to what the universe sends your way, how the connections are already there, just waiting for you literally to show up.
Absolutely.
Now, we do have
Absolutely.
one person. There are some people who don't have a mentor are and they would like to know, how do you move forward if you don't have a mentor?
My quick answer is, you get one. You get a mentor. That's why this crisis is such a good time to kind of sit back, like you said, and my grandma said, sort through your strings, because it allows you to kind of evaluate where you are and redesign where you want to be. And if you don't have mentors, then you look around you and you find mentors. So even if you're not comfortable with the people who are in your immediate circle, there are organizations online that have mentors, people who volunteer just, to help others. LinkedIn has a portal that allows you to sign up with individuals who will mentor you professionally. I do that. I give career advice to people all the time. It's not about money. It's just about giving back. It's about using your expertise, taking your experience and paying it forward, because somebody poured into me, added to my toolbox, my bucket, when it was empty or low or deficient in certain areas. So there are plenty of people who want to do that, and there are all sorts of them. That's why I say you can just go online and Google what it is. If you just put in there mentorship programs, mentorship organizations, how do I find a mentor, you will find plenty of information. And if you want to, you can go to my website, juledaniels.net, drop me an email at connect@juledaniels.net. And I'd be more than willing to assist someone who is trying to find their way through this crisis. If I can help, I most certainly will. If I don't have the answer, I'll try to find you to point you to the person who might be able to help you.
Okay. think we've got that question answered. So for those of you who do have questions, if you're watching in the watch party on Facebook, be sure you type them into the comment section, and they're actually being chatted to me. So you don't have to. You can always say, "I'm asking for a friend." You don't have to own it. You can say, "I'm asking for a friend," or "My sister wants me to ask." Whatever you need to do to get your question answered, do that. And they are being chatted to me, so I have to check it. As a matter of fact, here's one now. It's like,
Great. I love that there's so many questions. Keep them
yeah,
coming.
this is
Beautiful.
great. So now they're asking, so how do you recommend people handle money during this crisis? Because some people are financially worried about what to do.
Yeah. So when it comes to handling your money, you always have to put something away from yourself for yourself, right? You always have
Right.
to have your seed for your rainy day. So if you are blessed to still be working and you're generating income, I don't care if it's $10, you put away two. You have to put away something and hold something for yourself. And while the number may seem small, the hungriest person can be fed with a banana, and a banana may only cost 50 cents, depending on where you are. So that small amount gets you from one step to the next step. So manage your money by being conservative in the decisions that you make. If you're having trouble paying your bills, reach out to your creditors and have the conversation. It's not like they don't know. They rather have you as a customer than not have a customer because they still need revenue on the books. So negotiate terms that allow you to pay less. If you're a business, please don't walk away from your people who are in the gig economy, those solopreneurs and those small business people who are servicing you, your supply chain. Just renegotiate the terms. Sometimes it's so hard, like you just said, is for people to ask the question. People can't help you if they don't know what the problem is, you know?
Yes.
So be conservative with your money, renegotiate terms as best as you can. Stay away from loans if you can. If you have to take a loan, try to find the lowest interest rate for the shortest period of time possible. And if you know that you can't, you already know whether you can handle that payment. So don't go into it saying, well, in 6 months, I was supposed to get this contract. There's a rule I have in business that I had to learn through the School of Hard Knocks. I have 3 meetings with people. The first meeting is to talk about the business. The second meeting is to negotiate the terms and sign the contract. And the last meeting is to determine when I get paid and start the work. Because people who are serious take action. And so it doesn't take this constant, especially in this season, this constant back and flow, of conversation. So don't get caught up in the possibility of something that's going to come down the line and you get yourself into a loan because you're supposed to get that business. I did that when I was young. Trust me, my friends, my mama, my colleagues can tell you that story, and it is not a good one. It does not serve you. So learn from the people who made those types of mistakes. If it's not in hand, leave it alone. And if it's in hand, deal with it cautiously. You are a steward of God's money, so make sure you take good care of it.
That's right. And whoever asked that question does not watch A Sip of Inspiration regularly because we talk about that. I don't care what's going on in your life. You save 10% of that money, and I'm a big believer of tithing, so you tithe 10%, okay? And that's without question. You have to put something back. And I always joke that if we did what our mamas told us to do a long time ago, and we may be telling my age, but if you don't save anything but $5 a week, baby, try to save that $5 a week for every week she told me to.
It's very true, because if you think about it, if you had saved $5, right, for 12 months, that's $60. And if you did that for the last 4 years, that's $240. And now here you hit with the crisis. And that money could be the money that paid for your cell phone bill or got you some groceries, or it's about getting through, right, and getting over, because as you're going through the process of getting through and getting over, something is coming to you.
Right.
But you've got to be working toward it as it comes to you so that it doesn't hurt so hard.
Right. And every dollar you get, every bit of money you get, on this show, we talk about blessing that money you received and watch your thoughts and your mouth when you are handling that money. Because not only is your body listening, but your money is listening too. Okay. So
That's exactly right.
yeah, just learn to be grateful for what you have. And since we're in a big time out, I would add to the things that Jewel have suggested is, a quiet time for gratitude and forgiveness and things like that too, because those kinds of things will help you refocus your mind from what's going wrong to what's going right. And none of it's a magic pill, so just don't expect you to, even if you slept all day today, don't expect it to be better by tomorrow. As Jewel has pointed out to us, it does take time, but it does take action. It takes a lot of action on our part. So we're coming to the last few minutes of the show, but I wanted to remind you that Jewel has books there, and one of them that caught my attention is Three Sides of Every Crisis. So you should actually go out and get yourself a copy of that book so that you can figure out ideas to move through where you are, because we are all on all of that. If you're working, you're part of the organization, and you're part of the individual that's being impacted by the decisions that are being made by the organization. And believe it or not, even if you're not a part of that organization, you're still being impacted by decisions organizations are making, especially in the pandemic. And if you don't believe me, how many of us are going around here looking for cans of Lysol? Okay, so you know, saying that right. So those are really good. Those are just fantastic tips. And I think I had one more question. I always have questions. So
yes, sure,
yes,
I love it.
so I do. So I wanted to go back and touch maybe on people who are really afraid to ask the questions and ask someone to help them. Are there some questions that maybe you could recommend that they start with, so that they don't keep themselves in prison with their own no's? Because sometimes we've said no to ourselves so many times, or our wonderful good friends have told us we couldn't do that, and we believe that. So are there simple questions that will help them sort of get started so that they don't stay stuck?
Yeah, that's a deep one right there. If you're one of those persons who struggles with asking for help, the two things I'm going to suggest, one is going to be forward-facing for you, the other will be forward-facing for those who you would pose the question to. So my first thing is, when dealing with yourself, ask yourself why. There's a technique that's called the 5 whys, which means you ask the question why at least 5 times, because every time you ask that question 2, 3, 4, 5, you're able to go deeper and really get at the base of perhaps why you're asking, why you have that insecurity and vulnerability for not wanting to seek help and assistance. And then the other thing is, when it comes to asking questions, if you're uncomfortable asking, start off with small questions. Just work on building the relationship. That's why I say relationships are the new currency of business, but relationships are everything, and people, the more they know you intimately, they're more inclined to help you. We were once, when I was growing up, they used to say it's all about who you know. And as I got grown, I figured out that wasn't true, because I know Oprah Winfrey, but Oprah doesn't know me. So if she knew me and she knew of my circumstance, then she'd be in a position to decide how she could help, but she doesn't. So replace Oprah Winfrey with your brother, your cousin, your coworker, your manager, your boss, your sister friend, your soror, your frat brother, your mother, whoever it is, your significant other, your spouse, your honey bunny, your love, whoever that person is, and start with the small questions. because that allows you to work up the courage and to be able to assess and build the relationship so that you know what to ask and when to ask. So those are very, very important things because very often we just want to ask because we want to answer and we want to get to the business of getting what we need. But when you're in the position of need, you've got to be able to, work on the relationship so that you know how to ask and when to ask. So for example, when I was working in marketing and PR in New York, I also went to NYU, and so I got a job working in Manhattan, loved it. And I figured out that when my manager came to work, she needed her cup of coffee and at least 15 minutes before she was ready to have a decent conversation. So I had to wait until the environment was right. I had to learn to set the scene and not just push because I was in need. I need to make sure that it was good for me, where I was comfortable asking, and where it was good for her, and she was in a receptive place to be able to hear what I said. Because people can take anything that you tell them, it's all in how you say it. So start off small, build the relationship, make sure you set the environment so you understand what works for you and for the other person, and then start asking your questions. Prepare yourself for the yes and the no. Yeah, the no is just a setup for a yes. It may mean timing. There's several reasons why you may get a no. So just do the evaluation to understand why you got to the no, and then keep working on the yes, and then do the work, of course, like I said in the beginning, on yourself to figure out why you struggle with wanting to ask for help.
And as our mothers probably told you, each of us and others, no one ever died from a no. And in the sales world, I think it takes 31 no's to get a yes. So just look at that no as getting you closer to your yes.
I love that. I love that.
So, and Jewel did talk about the 5 whys. So I do have a worksheet that I use in my uh, counseling of others. I will actually put that in my chat. The 5 whys is a worksheet that reminds you to do it, and you just answer the question why 5 times, and you'll get to whether or not you really want to do that or not, and that you can do the privacy of your own home, because some people don't want other people to know what they're thinking, but uh, your life is talking, so people already know what you're thinking. So you guys, I remember Yana said that people already know what you're going through, child, because your life is talking. Okay, they don't do is look at your
That's
life.
right.
So I want to thank you for spending this time with me. I really enjoyed it. It was great talking to you, and I'm just excited about all that I have learned today. And gosh, um, I want to just say that I have truly been inspired. So I hope that the information, I know that what you've shared with me has actually inspired others. And I've been watching you from afar for years and you didn't even know. So it's like, it's always from the African American Women on Tour to Blacks in Government. So she didn't even know, right? So finally I asked. As a matter of fact, only it was a friend that actually put us together. So I want to thank you for saying yes to that and for making this a great show. So with that, Mike, as we close, I want to remind the listeners to be inspired, and to further notice, I want you to celebrate everything. Do not go gently into that good night. Find a heel that is worth dying for and take it. Be the person you're waiting for and make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous. And above all else, do it your way. I'm Stephanie Wilson Coleman. This is a sip of inspiration, and life is too short to drink cheap champagne. So everyone have a good evening, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.
Bye.